Hello, this is Chris/Tina coming to you live from a trail out in the woods. It's close to my birthday, so I figured I would take a little trip to relax my mind a little bit and kind of get out in nature a bit. I'm making a video because I read a book called The Man Who Would Be Queen, and I've heard that there's a lot of controversy about this book, and that the professor ended up resigning, and there was a lot of backlash to it. It was written back in 2003, and I've always been of the opinion that with the political climate the way it is, if you want actual science and people speaking kind of unfiltered thoughts, you need to go back a little bit further, especially if they're a lot more blunt and or scientific, which I am. I'm a metallurgist. No one knows what that is. I study metals, but I just usually say that I'm a technical manager. It makes things a lot easier. I'm autogonophilic. If you don't know what that means, it's essentially people who essentially get I guess I guess the term is kind of sexually aroused by seeing themselves as a woman, but I don't cleanly fit into that. I fit into it enough to where it makes sense, but for me the sexual response is a lot more subdued, and I think a lot of times it actually kind of satisfies a sexual need without necessarily, masturbating or having sex or any of that. When I had first started, it actually took away my sex drive for a few weeks. Like I didn't feel any need to do that, which was kind of strange. Hadn't necessarily felt that before, but so I'm going to be talking about the parts that were the most interesting to me. So there was the book essentially starts off with a boy named Danny. Danny's a very feminine boy. He was by age 2. He would always run to his mother's closet and try on high heels and wear dresses, and it sounds as if the femininity was kind of ambivalent when it came to his mother raising him, and his father was just like, no, there's none of that. So I think that his mother was kind of stuck in kind of a catch-22. It's like, do I crush his soul and not allow him to do it, or do I take it away and or no, do I take it away and watch it crush his soul, or do I encourage it because it makes him happy? And she was kind of stuck in there. And then for the next few years, it kind of grew to the point where he was asking for a Barbie bike for kindergarten and playing with dolls, but it was affecting his ability to fit in with other boys. And the author's kind of supposition was that that Danny would likely grow up gay, but not grow up to be transsexual. And I thought, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So, a lot of the book is talking about what gay people are attracted to, and essentially what kind of ticks gay people to lean more toward transgenderism. And one thing that I learned from this book, I read a summary, but he describes it more in depth, is that there's two types of transgendered people. One is that there's a homosexual transsexual who's typically a very feminine boy. That's pretty much just his nature. And then over time, to have better mate selection, and typically if they're attracted to straight men as opposed to gay men, that they will transition earlier and more effective than autogynephilic people. That leads me to the second portion. There's autogynephilic, which I fall into, and these are typically men who are later on in life. I'm 30, almost 31, and I kind of realized it. Like I had my first giant purchase and kind of leaned into it when I was 28, 29. Um, it was more a thought that I had had for a long time that I never really acted on. It was kind of always there, kind of in the background, but it took a while for me to actually go through with it, for better or for worse. So these people are typically heterosexual or vaguely bisexual. I fit into that category. I've had I was married to a woman, and after she found out about the autogynephilia, we divorced, and I've had experiences with men which were short term but pleasurable, and but a lot of their sexual arousal, or I guess a better term would be object of affection, would be themselves. And this a lot of times cuts them off from intimate contact and intimate relationships because they're focused on themselves as a woman. That is essentially their girlfriend, and that kind of kind of leads into kind of like a self-love relationship. There are, then I think you could separate that out further, and you could have the transgendered autogynephilic people, which are autogynephiles who eventually transition into being a woman, and then their outcomes are typically that they are in lesbian relationships, or they pair up with other autogynephiles. I found that interesting because I'm attracted to trans women, but I never really knew that there was a difference. And I've noticed on a lot of these sites and of my trials and tribulations in person that the homosexual transgendered people are not very into me if I tell them about my autogynephilia, and that sounds pretty obvious because, well, they're attracted to masculinity, and a lot of them transition to have better mate selection, which I understand. There was a paragraph in the book that I would summarize as there was a I'll call it, for lack of a better term, because there are differences, a transvestistic woman, man. I'm not sure where to put that. And when I say that word, I mean a cisgendered man who essentially puts on women's clothing and kind of lives as a woman for a time, and then kind of lives life as a man. I would say that's more or less where I fall into. I'm not entirely sure if there's a term for trans, or I think it's transvestistic, for I can't say that, transvestistic autogynephiles. I think that would be technically what I fall into. But so Stephanie essentially was, well, I'm going to say in his 40s as Don, and had a career as an executive in a bank or something like that, and then had a wife and kids, and essentially his wife knew. I don't think his kids knew, and he got very depressed, and then went to a therapist, and then ended up being a leader in a club called the I think Society for the Second Self, which was interesting, and would give speeches as Stephanie about cross-dressing and trying to relieve the stigma of it, which I think is admirable and I can relate a lot to. One thing I found extremely funny is that the people in this, I'll call it transvestistic category, they're overrepresented in categories such as engineering, science, accounting, and computer science. And it's like, that's funny because one, I fit into that category, and two, when I look at autogynephilic people, especially those who have transitioned, a lot of them have very, call it, male interest careers, interest in things as opposed to people. So I thought that was a fascinating caveat that even back in 2003 when this book was written, that was already pretty well known. It was quite funny, really. And I also want to say, I probably should have said this earlier in the video, that my opinions are really not that of the general community, and my viewpoints are likely in the minority. So please keep your insults to a minimum. But I've also, on the way here, I was thinking maybe I could just incorporate some of this femininity in my daily life. I mean, like I did my nails. I did them very badly. That kind of bothers me. But perhaps I could more or less live life as a gay guy who's not really gay, because I think femininity in men is often very looked down upon and is not attractive for men nor women. Men will look down on you and will say, well, what's wrong with that guy? And women just generally aren't attracted to it, so it isn't a preferential mode of being, in my opinion. But it's like, where else do you really turn there? Another thing that really hit me while reading the book was with autogynephiles, that a lot of them view their feminine nature as an innately part of themselves. Like, I'm expressing my feminine side. This is who I really am, but I'm just kind of stuck in this body, which hit me pretty hard. I had written poems. They're unfinished and parts of them are awful, but I may share them at a later date. About, kind of blossoming into this elegant sort of queen, and that a lot of times that they justify their careers, their masculine careers, as saying, well, I was repressing my femininity. And then he goes on to talk about a Green Beret that was autogynephilic, and saying that he was repressing it the whole time. And honestly, I can relate to that on a personal level. Like, they're like it's typical of autogynephiles to believe in her, I guess, is the best way of putting it. And I do too. I do too. And in my case, I'm not sure if that's just delusional or what's going on. But it's like there is a true innate essence to it. It's like, it isn't like this is an act. It's like there's definitely something there. And this book is not for the faint of heart. They do not mince their words, and it was a pretty difficult read. It kind of puts you in your place a bit. And another reaction was that I think that they certainly have a preference for the homosexual, transsexual group, that they're like the more true transgender people. And reading that just kind of made my heart drop. Like, it isn't that what I'm feeling is necessarily just a front, but that it's more of a disorder than an actual thing. And reading that just made me just feel awful. And I guess I can understand why. It's as if, well, so he also put in the book that when autogynephilic people were presented questions, that a lot of them would answer from their male and their female self. You know, more as if it was like a, you know, like a dissociative identity disorder meets gender identity disorder. And I can understand that too. It's like, it wasn't necessarily apparent in my last video because I was more speaking my experience and how I had felt as opposed to really putting a lot of emotion, well, you know, letting it kind of play out. It was more explaining myself, and I was kind of putting myself into more of a headspace to be able to properly answer that. And the homosexual, transsexual group didn't do that. It was as if they had an easier time with total self-integration, whereas a lot of times I feel like I'm very much so like a kind of a prisoner in several ways. One is that I do this when I'm home alone, and most of the times when I'm at home, I'm in a dress, or I'm wearing some article of clothing, or I'm wearing some mascara, some lipsticks, some color corrector. Not always in a wig, because you know, I can definitely pass pretty well androgynously. But that's a persistent part of my life, and I've gone through many stages of, well, not many, several stages of buying and then purging the female attire. You know, when I had told my wife about it, when I just couldn't take it anymore because I knew she wouldn't be understanding, which is my own fault. I had promised to throw it all away and not touch it again, and for a while I did. But it reminds me of nicotine addiction at times. It just, you know, it'll be gone for a while and then it'll creep back up on you until you can't really take it much longer. And I had bought everything again, and I'm not seeing myself throwing it away again. If anything, if I have a change of heart, it'll go into what I call the girl bag, and or a girl in a bag is what I call it, and just kind of store it away. It's like I'm not necessarily sure if this is something that's necessarily going to leave. Otherwise, it wouldn't seem so persistent. And honestly, if there weren't any repercussions, it would be nice to transition. But one, I know I wouldn't necessarily fit in. One, because I was definitely more feminine as a kid. You know, my dad and brother were the hunters, and I liked my video games and doing activities with my mom, and that was kind of looked down upon, and you know, they kind of recognized that and stopped it a bit. I definitely would have gone further if I didn't have that shame element, and shame is a lot of what I feel with a lot of this. Um, I have gone out in public before, uh, down in Austin, and I had a mixed bag of experiences. There were some times when I was on top of the world, and it was fantastic. I remember feeling just so beautiful, and I was with a lesbian couple at the time, and like I kind of fit in with them, and like I could, I guess, feel the energy, you know, like feel the mindset, feel the, just feel it, I guess. And there were other times, especially if I went alone, that it was not quite so. There was one time in particular, this was the last time I ever went out dressed up, that there was, so at the karaoke bar, there was a girl from New York, and she came up to me, and she became very friendly and affectionate. I couldn't necessarily tell if she was like attracted to me or if she was trying to give me advice or something. But you know, I obviously didn't pass very well, and especially with being alone at a bar. It's not typical female female behavior. And you know, she basically said like, uh, I was, it's like, I feel for people like, oh, like you. She thought I was, you know, obviously transgender, and I, it's like, and I just want to let you know that I really value you, and I value what you're going through. But it was in such an odd way to where I felt so singled out, and just that I could not tell for the life of me if she was trying to be a caring friend or if she was coming on to me. To this day, I still have no idea. It was that blurred. It was that strange. And for some reason, that made me feel very guilty. Very guilty, very shameful about it. And that was when I threw it away. And for a while, you know, things were improving. And so this was after my wife had left me, and I'm in a position to where I can't walk down the street to get another job because I had lost my job by then too. So then I moved to Michigan for another job, working in automotive. And at that point, it was we're going back to the bare basics. You know, I haven't even decorated my apartment yet. I'm hoping to change that this weekend. But you know, stability, uh, my finances were all screwed up. I had to ask my friend to give me $200 because I had cut out every non-essential expense. And knowing that you've cut everything out and having to ask your friend to give you money for essential groceries, that stays with you. So where I was going with this is that I honestly can't pinpoint exactly where recently I decided to do it again. I just remember, and I have bad short-term memory, very bad short-term memory, and feelings get a little bit muddled up. But I guess I wanted like I wanted to wear a dress again, and I wanted to feel pretty again, and I was sick of my regular clothes. I was sick of my I guess I hate this term, scarcity mindset, because I'm extremely frugal, and I don't spend a lot of money on much of anything. When I go out to bars, it's all Miller Lights, because that's the cheapest drink, and I've saved a lot of money, but at the expense of kind of my soul. And what does my soul encompass? Part of me is it's definitely autogynephilic. The other part of me, I'm not entirely sure. It's been so long, and I think part of that was kind of my soul kind of crying out for help, and another part of it was that I miss being pretty. I miss having pretty things, and just kind of coming to terms that perhaps this is part of who I am. A lot of what sets me apart is that I don't necessarily focus on the boobs or the vagina. It's more about being and feeling pretty. And that it's when I think about it, it's a lot less of like sexual arousal and more of, first thing that comes to mind is shame. And besides for shame, a lot of it is, just not wanting to be a man, really. And especially in today's society, we prioritize women more, whether it be in different programs or whether it be whose opinion we most want to see. A prime example is Kevin Samuels. He did shows with men, about dating and this and that for 3 years and got no traction. All of a sudden, when he started interviewing women, it shot to the moon. And I had seen this, and I've seen the blatant sexism toward men, and the proclivity for essentially men to be wrong about everything, or being blamed for everything, I guess I should say, and seeing that in my own life, that I think induced a lot of that gender dysphoria again. Now again, you may not believe me, or a lot of people just literally don't even care. And it's kind of been the biggest thing, is that none of my feelings have been validated, because no one wants to see what's obviously in front of them. I'm sorry, that got off track a bit. But this has been a nice video. So conclusion of the book, and what I think about it is that it is a tough read if you're really going through a lot of these things. He was especially hard on autogynephilia. He was a lot more sympathetic toward gay men and homosexual transsexuals. It was a lot more difficult, and I think his reasoning is that it's more of like a scrambled up heterosexual male, as opposed to if I could put words in his mouth, I would say like someone who this is really who they are. Although he did interview Cher, who was an autogynephilic transsexual, and her account was a lot more sexual in nature, and like like sexual, like based around her, as if, you know, she fantasized about being a woman and being penetrated by a guy. Which, I mean, that's fair, and the book did close out by his account on how eclectic and idiosyncratic she was. But for the majority of the book, it was rough, and my heart dropped several times reading it. Although I could not put the book down, I read it in like 2 days. But if you're going through this and you really want some answers, this book will probably help you out quite a bit. It it uh it it really helped me understand, say, what's going on, and, you know, it gave me a clearer road path on, you know, there are other people like you, and that, you know, you're not necessarily alone in this, you know, even in 2003. But yeah, it can be a tough read, but if you're really looking for answers, I would definitely give it a read. All right, I'll see y'all later. Bye.